So what do we do if the number in the front cannot factor out? We saw in the last section that, hey, if it factors out, factor it out, greatest common factor. Everything's great. We go home afterwards, everything's done, and we're all happy. But in this one, we're going to see that that doesn't always work out that way. So if we have, like this first example, 12x squared plus 17x plus 6, 12, there's nothing that is in common. 17 is a prime number. There's nothing I can factor out from all three of these. I know 12 and 6 have something in common, but nothing with the 17. So we're going to do what's called grouping. So in the diamond method, and I know you guys have seen this before, we're going to put A times C in the top and B in the bottom. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to do 12 times 6 in the top to get this here. 12 times 6 is 72. And then 17 down here. So what multiplies to 72 and adds to 17? 9 times 8? Would 9 times 8 work? 9 and 8 do work, right? Because 9 plus 8 is 17. 9 times 8 is 72. So that's really good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to split this 17 up as 9 and 8. So I'm going to have 12x squared plus 9x plus 8x plus 6. See that? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called grouping. So I'm going to group each one of these up. I'm going to group the 2 on the left and the 2 on the right. By the way, the order doesn't matter. This will still work no matter what. So I'm going to have 12x squared plus 9x plus 8x plus 6. So what do these have in common that I can factor out? Well, I can factor out an x and a 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to factor a 3x out from both of those, leaving me with a 4x plus 3. Then what can I factor from here on the right? Well, they both have a 2 in common, so let's factor out a 2. So I'll have 4x plus 3. Now this is the interesting part. This is where you got to pay attention. We have 4x plus 3, 4x plus 3. Both these are separated by a plus sign and have a 4x plus 3 in common. Let me just show you. What if it was 3xa plus 2a? All I did was replace the 4x plus 3 and 4x plus 3. I just replaced them with a. That just means these both have a in common, and I can factor the a out to the front and have 3x plus 2. So that's what I'm going to do with this grouping method. I'm going to take this 4x plus 3 that these both have in common, factor it to the front, and we'll be left with the 3x plus 2. Check it out. So bring the 4x plus 3 to the front, divide it out from everything else, and what are we going to be left with? We're going to be left with 3x plus 2. So I'm just bringing that 4x plus 3 out to the front, leaving us with the 3x plus 2 there. And that's factoring by grouping. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. And this one's a little more difficult. We're going to see if we can factor anything out from the beginning. Now it does have a negative, so let's go ahead and take that negative out from the start. So we have negative 8x squared minus 15x plus 2. I'm going to factor a negative 1 from the beginning. So we're going to do a times c on the top. 8 times negative 2 is 16, negative 16, and 15. So what multiplies to 15, or what multiplies to negative 16 and adds to 15? 16 and negative 1. So you got to bear with me and just let me move a couple things real quick. So I'm going to split that 15 up with the 16 and negative 1. All right, so now let's look at these as two groups, those two groups there. So I'm going to have a group of 8x squared plus 16x, plus my other group will be negative x minus 2. And from there, I'm going to factor out, I can factor out an 8x. So give me x plus 2. And then here I can factor out a negative 1. Don't forget we have that -1 out in the front. Last step, we factor out the x plus 2 from both of those, leaving us with the 8x minus 1. And that's what's inside the big brackets with the -1 out front. So really we just multiply that again and we get -1 times x plus 2 times 8x minus 1. Little complex, but if you go through it, it's not too bad. You really just ignore that -1 till the very end and do everything else the same on the inside. It's just that -1 on the outside. Like I said, ignore it and just bring it in at the very end and you'll be fine.